Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. I don't normally do two videos sort of on 2 consecutive days back to back, but quite frankly I had to really, because yesterday was such an amazing day that followed on exactly from the previous day that I described in yesterday's video. But before we get to that, let's have a look at our terms and conditions and our risk disclaimer, and remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades were taken, they're shown for illustration and training purposes only, and also remind you that there's a risk of loss in trading and investing. Remember, professional traders know and understand that losses can and will and do happen. I'll say that again, losses can and will and do happen. The trick is keeping the losses small. Right, let's get on to the charts. Now, in yesterday's video I looked at how we were using our higher time frame charts. If you remember, we looked on the ES and the YM, and if I go back to the previous day on the 15-minute chart, how our higher time frame DPs caught the low of the day, then the high of the day yesterday. Sorry, this was the day before, on April the 7th. But now I want to have a look just one day later, and I'll step forward just like I did in yesterday's video. So I want to go to the YM. So I'll go to the higher time frame chart. Now the higher time frame is normally between 3 and 5 time frames higher. So if you're on a 3-minute chart like this, the higher time frame would be in the 15-minute. If you're, say, trading a 15-minute Forex, the higher time frame would be the hourly. If you're trading daily charts, the higher time frame would be the weekly. So let's go out to the 15-minute chart. Now let's have a look. Even before yesterday opened, let's do that. Let's use our training mode. Let's jump back to the previous day's close, which would have been there. You can see we had the market come down here. Let's now go to the last pivot high, which is here. We right mouse click, we place a decision point on. Can you see it's on the chart in advance? There it is, before the market even. That's the beauty of these, they're leading indicators. Let's see what happens now. The market opens, it starts to rally ever so slightly, and then suddenly gets up into our resistance area. This is on a 15-minute chart. That then nails the high. The market declines sharply. Let's go back and do exactly the same. We right mouse click, place the DP on. Again, there you can see it's on the chart in advance. In fact, if I do that a couple of bars earlier, see if I do it even there, right mouse click, DP, there's our next support zone. You see how far away it is, even before the market gets there. Market comes down, up a bit, down, and then reverses back up. If I turn training mode off, you can see that pretty much caught the low of the day. But the beauty was how this came in at the high here. This was actually a lot better because it reversed right at the DP rather than going just slightly below and then snapping back. That's all well and good, but let's see how you actually trade it. What you do is then go back to the time frame you're working off and see if there are any setups in the direction of that large degree trend. Remember, our MTP trend indicator helps as well, because that uses the major pivots on the current swing, which are normally the same as your higher time frame DPs anyway. So this is what happened. Can you see how the market on the YM rallied up right into our 15-minute DP? If I put the cursor on, we then had a VS sell setup come in here. VS sell setup is where we have a high volume spike on a bar that goes through a previous important swing pivot high. The market then fails to follow through and reverses at our DP resistance area, and this tells us that professionals are now entering the market on the short side, in other words faking out the amateurs, and normally when this happens you tend to get a very sharp move in the opposite direction as the professionals catch all the amateurs off guard and then move it very sharply in the opposite direction. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened. So we had our VS sell set up here. If I just move this across a bit, you can see we're at our major resistance area. Our MTP trend at this particular time here has now gone grey. In other words, showing you that the market was in an area where a reversal was likely to unfold. So we right mouse click, I'll just move that out of the way, right mouse click of the red sell bar. We do the analysis. This then allows you to, or calculates the number of contracts, lots or shares, contracts in this case because it's a future, to keep your risk less than 2% of a sample $20,000 account. Remember, we can actually have different account sizes and different currencies if you wish as well to change those. But let's keep it on US dollars. So that will then give you the entry, the stop, to give you a short trade. If I clear everything off, I'll just take these large degree resistance off here. Let's see where the target would have been. So let's use training mode. Let's jump back to where the sell setup was. There it was there. So we right mouse click, do analysis, and that's where the target would have been, right the way down here. So that would have been on the chart in advance again. Let's now turn training mode off so we can see what happened. And as you can see, this got you short up here just before the market made a really sharp fall. And the result of this was an absolutely massive 11R profit. You can see here it turned initial risk of approximately 360 US dollars into just over $4,000 and nailed the very high of the day for you as well. So this is a great example of how, yet again, our higher time frame DPs can help you gauge larger degree support and resistance areas that in this case nailed the high of the day on the YM and also generated a MTPredictor VS sell setup that got you short just before that sharp decline, and the result was an absolutely brilliant trade. The NQ wasn't quite so clear. It went up to resistance, no MTPredictor trade setup there, and then bounced just above the high. So this was a case where the market wasn't really clear. On the ES, let's do exactly the same. So before the market even opened, this is yesterday, which is the 10th. You would have gone back to this level, put the DP on, and as you can see, that caught the very high of the day. As the market started to decline down, right mouse click, here's the DP again. Again, that would have been on there in advance, and as you see, that caught the low of the day. Let's now go down to the 3-minute chart and see what trade setups there were in that. Exactly the same as the YM. We had a VS sell setup that actually nailed the very high of the day. Our MTP trend was grey, so it was one to take. But can you see how the picture was lovely and clear? It came in absolutely perfectly at this high. We right mouse click, do the analysis. There's our target that actually coincided with the larger degree support zone, and in this case was a lovely 6.7R profit. This time turning an initial risk of about $350 into just over 2,300. But again, an absolutely lovely trade. For you guys who are a little bit more of an expert, if I right mouse click down into the previous day's low and do Elliott wave intermediate, you can see this was a 5-wave sequence. We know from this that if the market goes beyond the DP from the prior wave 4, which would have been around here, it normally retraces the entire prior sequence and goes back to the DP off the start of the sequence, which would have been from here, and that was in exactly the same place as well. So another reason why that would be a good high. The market also declined down here again in a 5-wave sequence. If I right mouse click, do Elliott wave intermediate, you can see how it came down and made the low at the minimum wave 5 WPT. So that was another reason, if you were short, to want to bring your stops closer and look to come out towards the low there. Our MTP trend is actually strong, where it's just beyond the strength band. So if you had have moved to the ATR stop, that would have been there, and it still would have been a nice 6R profit. But because this was the end of a 5-wave sequence as well, you may want to trail just at your 1-bar highs and lock in a nice 6.9 or almost 7R profit there as well. But the star of the show was the YM. Again, if you'd used the ATR stop, because the MTP trend was strong, in other words beyond our strength band, the ATR stop was actually in the same place. You can see there's our red dots. It would have been stopped out just about there, again for a nice 11R profit. So the star of the show was the YM in this case, but the reason I'm doing the video, and again I don't do normally 2 videos back to back, but the reason I'm doing it again today is because we had exactly the same situation as we did in yesterday's video. In other words, where we projected in advance our 15-minute DPs that for the second day running caught the highs and lows of the day on the YM. And yet again, we had a VS sell setup coming in at our hard time frame resistance. In this case, on the YM, produced an absolutely massive 11R profit. So a great example of not only the MTPredictor trade setups, the VS setup is a new trade setup in MTPredictor 8, which we're looking at here. So not only the VS sell setup, but also our higher time frame DPs nailing the highs and lows of the day for you. So yet another very good day for MTPredictor yesterday.